says من أخلاق المؤمن الإنفاق على قدر الإختار والتوسع على قدر التوسع وإنصاف الناس وابتداؤه بالسلام عليهم. This is mentioned in the book of Kafi, volume 3, in which Imam is talking about the etiquettes and the moral values of a mu'min, meaning a believer. So hence, every single one of us can actually benefit from this hadith. So the very first thing Imam mentions, al-infaq ala qadr al-iqtar, to give away, to give for a charity, even when the mu'min himself or herself is at the situation where it's basically financially not stable. Ala qadr al-iqtar. So it doesn't mean that necessarily I have to wait and I have to plan for that sense of, let's say, like financially becoming stable in order to start, doing that charity. What is Imam telling us? From day one, as we start realizing the faith, as the day one we start realizing the faith gets, like twangled, gets twisted by the topic of infaq. So it doesn't matter in which situation or which circumstances we are. It doesn't have to be an enormous amount. As long as we have this rhythm, knowing that we constantly supposed to like chip in order to maintain the faith that we have. وَالتَّوَسُّعُ عَلَى قَدْرِ التَّوَسُّعِ. And this giving away is again according to the amount that we are capable of. We don't want to go to the extremes, right? At the same time, we have to make sure we be moderate about it. وَإِنصَافُ النَّاسِ, and being fair towards one another. Not again like jumping to be like this, like prejudgments. The minute we see someone, we start coming up with all of these accusations and all of these prejudgments from the past. No, you have to put a line on that one. إنصاف على الناس وابتداؤه بالسلام عليهم. And this start of saying the salam before the other brothers will tell me the salam. So in a sense, Imam is trying to talk about the attributes of humbleness, the tawadu. And when his Imam is talking about this, the more we want to learn about Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam, the more we have to understand the circumstances that he was living in. So according to one narrations from himself, he mentions that after Ashura, there was less than 20 people, not in Medina, but in Medina, Mecca, and Kufa overall, who were the followers of us, the Ahlul Bayt. Less than 20 people. And how is Imam able to change all of this? That's when we see how great of an Imam he is. Within 34 years of being the Imam, he changes this picture completely to the point that when it comes the day of Shahada of the Imam, when it comes the day of burial of the Imam, so many people, they attend the ceremony, not only Shi'ayan, but even others, to the point that the Masjid al-Nabi becomes empty of people. Becomes empty of people. That's how Imam is able to change the circumstances. So despite of having few numbers of supporters, despite of having like the entire government basically looking after the Imam 24/7, despite of not even living in the city of Medina. Those who have read the history, they know that when Imam Zain al-Abidin goes back to the city of Medina, he doesn't stay within the city because he's mourning for Imam al-Hussein. He goes outside of the city. He has this tent which basically set up for himself, in which he would constantly be mourning for Abu Abdullah Hussein. So in technicality, Imam is not even in touch with the public. It's not like he has normal classes. It's not like he has, for example, sessions and lectures and for example, different classes that he's constantly talking to people. No, he's away from the town. So he's away from the town. The number of followers are few. The government is constantly sending people, sending spies, sending all of this, sense of control over the Imam because they're after his life. Yes. Yet again, within this long journey that Imam has ahead of him, he's able to change all of that. And that's not the beauty part about it. What's the beauty part about the role of Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wassalam? We have to go one step back in order to understand Imam Sajjad a little bit better. We have to understand the movement of Imam al-Hussein from a specific lens. What is that specific lens? Which perhaps sometimes we talk about it in some of the majalis, is the answer to this question that when Imam al-Hussein made his movement, was his move out of something that was already planned, or was something that was happening as it was going along? Did Imam al-Hussein had this vision from the move that he made, or was it something that was just happening out of accident? It's a very technical question, and it results in so many or two different answers, right? In a sense, we say if Imam al-Hussein was only going through the journey towards Kufa and all of this stuff start happening to him, that just becomes one simple journey of the Imam. But if you look at it thoroughly, and if you look at especially the effects of what the Imam al-Hussein's move has been able to do around the world, then we start realizing that there has to be something a little bit more into this. What is that? They refer to it as the school of Ashura. They don't say the event of Ashura. Event happens once, it finishes. But we refer to it as the school, the system, perhaps, if you want to say. Why? Because it's constantly happening. It's constantly providing the effects that it's supposed to be doing. It's constantly awakening the people. We see the examples in Ziyarat of Arba'in. I mentioned this example so many times. Every year, more people, they get up, they leave everything, their sense of comfort, their work, their house, their family, their education. They travel from all over the world just to go there and walk for a couple of days, be able to do one a small, like short ziyarat of Imam al-Hussein. Those who have gone, they know it is so, mashallah, crowded. You don't even get a chance to do a proper ziyarah. As some of the Marajas made the fatwas as well, it is the ziyarat of Arba'in is just to say Assalamu alayka ya Abu Abdullah and then leave because there is no space. So the question comes to, to the mind is this: all of these people, whatever number you want to say, 10 million, 15 million, 20 million plus people from all over the world, different cultures, different languages, different background, different education, they have absolutely nothing in common. All of them come in for one purpose. But wait a second, where is the propaganda for this? Where is the advertising? Where is the marketing? There is no marketing team. There is no advertising constantly on YouTube, on like different channels. There is no advertising on TikTok or any of the social media. If anybody within the world wants to bring this amount of people together for one meeting, do you know how much planning does it take to confirm with at least 10 million people? Can you meet on such a day and such a time and such an hour? How much planning does it take? Imam al-Hussein, without any marketing team, without any sales team, without any advertisement, without any digital marketing, without any of this technology that we have, brings every year and every year. How many millions of people? What does that indicate? That indicates the movement of Imam al-Hussein is not just one event. The reason we constantly commemorate the Shahadat of Abu Abdullah is this one. It tells us that it's a live movement. A live movement has functions, right? It has results. As a result of attending Majlis of Imam al-Hussein, that sense of awakening gets given to the people who attend the Majlis of Abu Abdullah, for example, one of them. So as a result, we see that every year more people get to find the hubb of Hussein, the love of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. So when we go back to the first question, was the movement of Imam al-Hussein was all happening by accident and Imam was making decisions on the spot? The answer is no. Because when we look at it, we see the way Imam actually planned his journey, planned his movement towards Karbala, because the news was already given to him. From way, from day one of his birth, the news of his shahadat was given to him. So he was already prepared for this battle. So he moves in a way to make this battle as a sign, as a criterion for whoever is going to come afterwards to be able to refer back to it. And just by looking at the tragedy of Ashura, be able to understand the difference between haqq and batil, truth and falsehood. That becomes the mission and the vision, if you want to say. Now, when it comes to a movement, which we refer to it as a school of thought or a school of actions, there are so many questions that needs to be answered. Number one, why did Imam actually go for it, which they usually talk about in the 10 days of Ashura? Number two, how Imam was able to implement his thought and vision for generations to come, which again, sometimes we talk about it. Number three is which becomes actually even more important, is how the message, how this school of thought, how this system was able to be conveyed from the time of Ashura till the next generation. That's when the role of Sayyida Zainab and Imam Sajjad salatu wasalam just comes out. It flourishes. As you all know, a lot of those who were giving advices to that Mal'un Yazid after the tragedy of Ashura was finished, they all told him the very same thing. Leave alone the family of Abu Abdullah. Don't do anything with them. You already got what you want. You wanted the head of Imam al-Hussein, you already got that one. Just leave them aside. But he had to go and he had to do what they have done. That by itself created this background, this base, if you want to say, to make sure that the tragedy of Ashura will never be forgotten. Do you know how many times they were planning to actually murder Imam al-Sajjad and the rest of the prisoners on the way from Karbala to Kufa and from Kufa all the way to Sham and in Sham? For them, it was a piece of cake. They had already done whatever they wanted. How much would have taken for them just to say another order and kill everybody from the youngest one to the eldest one? At least 3 times happened for Imam al-Sajjad. One time on the day of Ashura, when they start looting the tents of Abu Abdullah. Second time in Kufa, when Imam al-Sajjad is brought to the Dar al-Amara and he's facing Ubaidullah, and Ubaidullah asks him, who is he? Nobody answers. Imam does not answer him. Imagine, Imam is brought up to the Dar al-Amara. Ubaidullah is sitting on his chair, on his throne, whatever, looking all powerful. And he's like, literally everybody's scared in a way that nobody can even speak a word in front of him. He looks at Imam al-Sajjad and he says, what is your name? Imam al-Sajjad does not respond. He's just looking at him. You see the courage? Somebody else has to say, وَقِيلَ هَذَا عَلِيُّ ibn al-Hussein. Somebody says, this is Ali, the son of Hussein. So immediately Ubaidullah responds, it's like, Ali ibn al-Hussein, wasn't he killed in the Karbala? And he mentions this, wasn't he killed by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The minute he says by the will of Allah, Imam al-Sajjad responds. See, constantly on the awareness of what are they trying to do with this tragedy of Ashura, how they're trying to reflect the vision of Ashura. The minute he says by the will of Allah, Imam responds. He says, I am Ali ibn al-Hussein and I had this brother who was older than me. Yes, he was killed in the battle of Karbala and you killed him, not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then again, he turns around and says, no, everything we do by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's trying to go on the Jabri side, right? Compulsion side. Imam says, no, Allahu yatawaffa al-anfus. Yes, Allah takes the soul. By the act of murder happens by the actions of people. You killed my brother. You killed my father. When he responds like this, Ubaidullah becomes extremely angry. What does he do? Kill him. The very first order that comes. And they go to kill Imam al-Sajjad. That's when Sayyida Zainab gets up. And she holds on to the rada of Imam al-Sajjad and says, no way. If you want to kill him, you have to kill me first. Now Ubaidullah, again, a smart man. So he tries to change the environment. So he changes the argument again. He says, Ma ajaba min rahim. How puzzled I could be from this family relationship. Trying to make it a sensitive moment. He's trying to make everybody away from that awareness. So he tries to change the topic. How great of this family relationship we're seeing between the two, that the auntie is willing to give up her life for the sake of, for example, the nephew, right? Again, Imam al-Sajjad gets up. What does he say? He refers to Sayyida Zainab. Ya Ammi, Uskati, let me talk to him. Then he turns around, he looks at Ubaidullah. And this is when Imam's hands are in chains, his legs are in chain, he can barely stand up. The description of the Imam is like a lot of times when they want to excuse him from getting killed, it's like he's dead already. If you just give him one more day, he will die. He stands up, he looks at them in the eye. What does he say? He says, are you threatening me by qatl, by killing, by murder? Our adatuna shahada, wa karamatuna shahada. Our habit is to be killed. Our karamat, our honor is to become shaheed. You want to make me scared of killing? This is the Imam Sajjad that we have. Same thing in the Majlis of Yazid. Allah la'natullah alayh. When he goes there, when there is that debate happening, the very first thing Yazid does, he calls out his speaker, mashallah, the speaker who is getting all of the haram money, right? Calls him to go on the member. And what does he do? Obviously, the haram money, what does it result into? He starts talking all of these ill languages about Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Muhammad al-Mujtaba, and Abu Abdullah al-Husayn. Once he finishes, Imam al-Sajjad looks at Yazid. He says, do I have a permission to go on these pieces of woods? Referring to the member of Rasulullah. Very clear choice of words. Imam does not refer to it as a member. He said these pieces of wood that you have piled up in the shape of a member. Why? Then Imam says, because I want to talk about something that the audience will gain reward from, and they will find hidayah, they will find guidance. So first Yazid says no, obviously. He knows. But the people around him, they're like, this guy, he cannot even go up the member. Let him go. Insist, insist, insist. He gives him the permission. Imam goes on the member. The very first thing he does, where? In the city of Sham. How many years they've been away from the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt? Do the math. When was Muawiyah appointed in Damascus? Damascus itself became part of the Islamic territory, I think around 13 Hijrah. Muawiyah was appointed as the governor of Damascus at the time of the second Khalif. So from the time of second Khalif to the time of, the Shahadat of Imam al-Hussein, how many years is that? Roughly give or take 35 to 45 years. 35 to 45 years, all they have heard was from the system of Umayyads. To the point that when Muawiyah offers Salatul Jum'ah on a day of Wednesday, nobody complains. Nobody makes an objection. That's how much Muawiyah had influence on this. Now, among these people that have absolutely no idea about the Ahlul Bayt, have no idea about who they are, they refer to them as Khariji. This term of Khariji is something that Imam, when he was saying, he was referring to it as Musibah. Meaning, like, think about a nation with the name of Islam that thinks of the very same family members of their own prophet as Kharijis, as foreigners. Not foreigners as in terms of citizenship, but foreigners in terms of religious aspect. People who have absolutely no idea about religion. That was the perspective, right? That's why people were throwing rocks and stuff towards the caravan of prisoners. They really meant it. Imam goes on the minbar. The very first thing he does, Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. He starts with the hamd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, expressing the thankfulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Immediately followed by that, he starts to introduce himself. Those who know me, they know me. Those who do not know me, I am the son of Makkah or Mina. I am the son of Zamzam, and so on and so forth. Starts counting virtues after virtue after virtue after virtue. He starts counting the son of Nabi Rasulullah, the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the son of Sayyida Fatima al-Zahra. To what point? The Ravi says there was a man there who was a Jewish. He was a non-Muslim. When he hears the name of Sayyida Fatima al-Zahra, it awakens him. Like, wait a second. So he's the grandson of your Rasul? He's the grandson of Nabi Rasulullah? The Jewish guy, right, objects Yazid. He says, how dare you, how you Muslims are. If he were to be given the news that perhaps a shoes from Nabi Isa is somewhere in a city, we would go and we try to keep that shoe, or we try to protect it. You guys have killed the very same grandson of your own prophet like this in this situation, and you're praising and you're are actually enjoying it. What does that tell us? The way Imam al-Sajjad conveys the message leaves absolutely no room for the message of Ashura being diverted from its purpose and mission. Constantly protecting this mission through different examples, different reactions. And what is that has to do with us today after 1400 years? That brings us the second responsibility that we have. See, number one is to be able to have the majalis of the Ahlul Bayt. MashaAllah, that's great. That has a lot of reward. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of us and extend our tawfiqat. The first step is already hard a little bit because we have to put along a lot of resources, time, volunteers, MashaAllah, donors and sponsors, all of this programming and planning. But there is a second aspect to it. If the second aspect is not met, a lot of time this first aspect of it gets diverted from the main mission. What is that second aspect? Was the role of Imam al-Sajjad in conveying the message of Imam al-Hussein. It was not only the commemoration. It was not only giving the food on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the name of Imam al-Hussein. No, Imam would use every single instant to make sure he conveys the message. Not only the Imam, Sayyidah Zainab, even the little girls, even in the kharabat of Sham, in the wreckage of Sham, they would collect whatever they would give them as food. I don't know what would they give them. They would collect the best of it. They would try to make connection to the other kids who would come and look at them as prisoners. Using the food, they would talk about the events of Ashura. Not only historical, but the lessons from the Ashura. So that's why I keep on going back. Like if you want to understand what Imam Sajjad did in 34 years, not only to live the memories of Ashura, but constantly providing guidance for those who were absent and for generations to come, the reality and the lessons from the Ashura. So in a sense, all of us sitting here in the masjid of Imam al-Hussein, we all owe it to Imam al-Sajjad and Sayyidah Zainab salam alayhi. So as tonight is the night of Shahada, we can learn a little bit more about the ways he conveys the message. We look at his karamat, interesting. So many karamat has been mentioned by Imam al-Sajjad, by the Fariqain, both Sunnis and Shias. And that's what makes it very interesting. The amount of caring that he had for the sake of the public. I mean, just think about it. If a family does something bad to my family, for whatever reason, a battle takes place, one person kills another one. What happens between the two families? Would they ever forgive each other? Or years after years after years, there will be this enmity. As Imam al-Sajjad says, right? How many of his family members in one day, in front of his eyes, were beheaded? 17 family members. Yet again, what does Imam al-Sajjad do? When the tragedy of Harra takes place, Imam al-Sajjad is outside of the Medina. He opens the door towards the families of the very same people, perhaps, who were the enemy of the Imam and the Ahlul Bayt. As the report says, close to 400 family members, they go and they join or they enter the house of Imam under the protection of Imam al-Sajjad. 400 people. Imagine you open the door and you have 400 guests. All of a sudden, what would you do? And how did Imam treated them? To the point that when they ask, when they leave the house of the Imam, of how you were treated in the house, they were saying like we were treated so respectfully, so well and so perfect, like even better than how we were raised at our own house by our own father and mother. You see how Imam is pushing the message of Ashura? Any means possible, in any circumstances possible. Imam is not saying, okay, these are the people that I know you, I know you, I know you. I'm going to close my... No, the door is wide open. The door is always wide open. And the results of that is that when we see the uprising constantly going to the rise in the city of Medina, city of Mecca, city of Kufa, the whole changeover. The very same people of Kufa, which we say they did not support, they did not stand up for their promise, the very same people of Kufa, right after the sermon of Imam al-Sajjad, they were changed. They started making the first uprising of the Tawabin. The very same people who were not ready to show their support for Imam al-Hussein, one sermon of Sayyidah Zainab and Imam al-Sajjad changes everybody. You see, it's a school of Ashura. It's not one event. And it continues to happen. It continues to happen. Now, when it comes to karamat of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam, there are beautiful, again, narrations by both Sunnis and Shias. One of them is very interesting, at least for me. And this is narrated, mashallah, in the perfect text. You can actually go and refer to it. It says, Imam al-Sajjad goes to Masjid al-Haram. Those who have gone to Hajj, they know. Usually during a Hajj time, it's very busy. It's very busy. It's hard to find spots where one of the places is Hajar al-Aswad, second one is Hajar Ismail. These two places are always crowded. It's very hard to find a place. Now it happened that, for whatever reason that year they had droughts in Mecca. So the people of Mecca, they had sent out help, SOS, to all of the elite members and the pious and Abidin and the Zuhad of their time. So mashallah, had come a group of them from Basra, from here, from there, from here. And they are mentioned by names actually, very interesting. So mashallah, everybody, every person more pious than the other one. They have the signs of a mu'min, inshallah. They all come, they gather in Mecca, and people ask them, you guys are the best of the people. Do a prayer for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send down the rain. So they go, they empty out the Hajr al-Aswad. This group of people, they go inside of there. They start offering salat, they start doing supplication, they start doing their cries and mournings and supplication and supplication and supplication. No matter how hard they try, not a single drop of rain comes down. Then Riwayah has a young man, a youth, enters the Sah, enters the Masjid al-Haram. From the look of it, he has the signs of ubudiyat, and he's weak in terms of the skin color. He walks and he gets closer to them. He says one thing. He says, wasn't there a single man among all of you who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would actually love? So for the sake of his love would send down his rain? Obviously, these guys are champions, right? So they know how to, argue. They immediately respond, our duty is to pray. The result is on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he wants, he sends down the rain. If he doesn't, he doesn't. That's up to Allah. Trying to put the thing on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does Imam says? Get out of the Hajr Get out of the Hajr Ismail. Go out of the here. They leave. Imam goes inside. Does not offer prayer. Does not offer a lot of supplication. All he does, he goes to sajda. He says the simple word, Ya Sayyidi, O my Lord. By the love that you have for me, send your ni'mah upon these people. Khalas. The Ravi says the minute Imam says this, it started to showering so much that people had to run away, being afraid of a flood. So he goes to Imam, he's a smart man again, immediately asks the question, how were you so sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you this much? Imam says, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not love me, he would not have invited me for his Hajj. When I'm here, there's an invitation involved. If there is an invitation, there is this love. If there is this love, I can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that love. Just one example. Second example, Sheikh Saduq talks about it. Very famous story. One of the companions goes to Imam Sajjad and he complains. What are the usual complaints that we have these days? The very same complaints they had it on those days. What is the number one complaint that we have? Money. Yes? He goes to Imam Sajjad, he complains about the same thing. He says, I have this much debt and I cannot basically put the bread on the table for my family, and I have a big family. Imam Sajjad cries for him. And the Sahaba, the companion asked, Imam, why are you crying? He said, what? Is there anything worse than a mu'min to bring his haja upon another mu'min, to bring his request for another mu'min, and the other mu'min would not be able to answer the request of the brother while looking at him suffering from that request? Any pain worse than this? And Imam does a dua for him. He says, I don't have anything in my position. Inshallah, Allah will resolve your problem. The companion goes. He comes back in a couple of days. There were some hypocrites, obviously, right? He comes back to Imam Sajjad and says, oh, Imam, that day I came to actually ask for forgiveness. Imam says, why? He says, because when I left, the rumor was spread around, and some of the hypocrites, they were making mock of you. Imam says, how? He says, as I were out, the rumors got spread out, and they started mocking you, saying, oh, this is the Imam of, the followers of whatever. He claims that everything happens through him. At the same time, he cannot provide 400, dirham that he was in debt. So now the problem becomes two. Number one, my debt's still in place. Number two, now I have made something that made you guys dishonor, lose your status. Imam says, now the permission is given. Now I have a chance. He says, he calls, the servant, and then comes in, it's like, bring my iftar and bring my sahur. The servant goes back and brings 2 loaves of bread. Imam takes this, gives this to the companion, says, go, and by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these 2 pieces of bread will give you enough wealth that you don't have to ask anybody for anything. Now, if I'm the companion, I have this amount of debt, the credit card is maxed out, and Imam is giving me 2 loaves of bread. And the 2 loaves of bread that are so dried and so hard that nobody can eat it. It's basically stuff that we throw out, right? He's looking at it and he's looking at the Imam. It's the Imam, right? He goes out. He's puzzled. What am I going to do with 2 dry pieces of bread in the middle of the city of Medina while all of this stuff is happening? As he's walking by, the first store he goes by, it's a fisherman. He has sold whatever fishes that he could. The remaining had stood out so much that they had become dried. He looks and says, hey, your fish is dry, my bread is dry. Why don't we do an exchange here? 1 fish for 1 loaf of bread. The guy looks at it, is like, okay, the fish, nobody's going to buy it. It's, again, a waste. At least I have a piece of bread. He does an exchange. He walks by a little bit more. He sees a spice seller. Again, nobody's going to him. In the middle of the night, everybody's like closing out. It's the last minute, last call. He says, hey, how about some of your salt for a piece of bread? The guy's like, okay, some salt for a piece of bread. And perhaps tonight I have a good bread for dinner. They do an exchange. And the companion is thinking, what? I'm going to use the salt. I'm going to put it on the fish. I'm going to sell it the next day, perhaps. He goes home. Those two go home. He goes home. The very first thing he does is he wants to clean out the fish. The minute he opens and cuts the stomach of the fish, what comes out? 2 pieces of jewel. He takes the 2 pieces of jewel and he's puzzled about all of this stuff. He was questioning, right? There is a knock on the door. Who is behind the door? The fisherman and the spice seller. What is it? We brought your loaves of bread back. Why? They were so dried that none of our family members could actually bite into it. So we thought you're a very poor man that you feed yourself off from such a quality bread. So we felt bad, we brought it back for you. And the stuff we gave you is halal, no worries. He said, okay, I have 2 pieces of bread and a fish and 2 jewels, right? MashaAllah. On one day, less than a half a day. He comes back, again, there is a knock on the door. Who is it? Servant of the Imam. What is the Imam's wants? Imam has sent the message and told us, you got your share, send us ar-ruzi back, send us the loaves of bread back to us. That's something that only we can handle, the Ahlul Bayt. 1 point, less than half a day, everything gets resolved. That's the Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now on this night, after 34 years of mourning for Imam al-Hussein, after 34 years of constantly shouting the name of Abu Abdullah, قتل الحسين ibn Ali Atshana, قتل الحسين ibn Ali Ja'a. Finally, Imam gets the chance to find that peace and rest. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam narrates, on the last night of Imam's beautiful life, he called upon me and he says, oh my dear son, come to me. When I went to him, he embraced me and he held me tight to his chest. Then he asked me to go and bring some water for him to refresh his wudu. When I went and I brought this cup of water, this bowl of water, Imam, by looking at it from far distance, told me, oh my son, this is not a good quality water. Go and look at the source. This water has something dead inside. Imam al-Baqir says, I went back to where the water like case was, and I brought some light or candle, and I started looking inside. I found a dead rat inside of the water. So I changed the water. I took another like fresh water for Imam al-Sajjad to do his wudu, and he told me, oh son, this is the night that I have been promised. This is the sign of me departing this world. Then he started doing wasiyah to Imam al-Baqir. Ya bunayya, oh my dear son, stay away from zulm, stay away from oppression on the one who has absolutely no other support than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Stay away from this one. This is one farewell. Then Imam makes a second wasiyah. He says, oh my son, do you know the camel that I have, my personal camel? That's the camel that, according to this reports, Imam made a journey to Hajj 22 times on this camel without hitting it even once. 22 times from Medina to Mecca by this camel without even hitting it once. He makes a recommendation on this camel to Imam Muhammad al-Baqir. He tells them, watch out for it. You may see a strange act from it once I'm gone. Imam al-Baqir again talks about this. He says, once the Imam became shaheed, Once we finished the burial, once we covered the grave, once we wrote the name of Imam al-Sajjad on the grave, as the people were going back to the house, this camel broke loose and he went to the grave of Imam al-Sajjad. He kneeled on the side of the grave, constantly weeping and weeping for Imam al-Sajjad in a way that would make everybody cry. So the people would come to Imam al-Baqir and they would tell him about the camel. Imam al-Baqir would get up, he would go to the grave of Imam al-Sajjad, he would tell the camel, that's enough, let's go home. The camel would accompany Imam al-Baqir back towards home. The very next hour, he would get up and go back to the grave of Imam al-Sajjad, again kneeling down on the side of the grave, weeping for Imam al-Sajjad. This happens for 3 days. Imam al-Baqir tells the companions, leave it be. Leave it be. He knows where he wants to go and he will go there. They say after the third day, they find the camel as dead as has been dead for so many years. This is just a ma'rifah of a camel towards Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salatu wassalam. But let's look at the day of Ashura. Let's look at the day after the day of Ashura. When they get the caravan ready to leave the land of Karbala, now they put everybody on the camels and they're about to move the caravan through the Godal of Qatlaga. Here Sayyid Zainab looks up to the front of the caravan. She spots that Imam al-Sajjad is looking at the Godal of Qatlaga as if the life of Imam al-Sajjad is about to be taken away from him. She runs out towards Imam al-Sajjad, says, Ya Baqiyat al-Madin, oh the remainder of the past ones that I have, you are all that I have. What is it that you're doing with yourself? These are going to pass. Alaykum bis-sabr. Imam al-Sajjad looks at Sayyida Zainab. He says one thing. He says, oh auntie, can't you see the bodies of the shuhada in the Godal of the Qatlaga? Can't you see them doing ghusl and kafan of the bodies of their own soldiers and the body of the grandson of Nabi Rasulullah, the body of the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the body of the son of Sayyida Fatima al-Zahra, laying there on the plains of Karbala, no head in the body, no hand in the body, no finger in the body. The body you cannot tell the front from the back because they've been trampled over by horses. Oh auntie, how can you tell me not to cry for him when they have left the body of Aziza Fatima on the place of Karbala without any ghusl, without any kafan, without any burial ceremony? Oh, say, oh auntie, what are you talking about? Perhaps if this is not enough for Imam al-Sajjad, they say when his burial took place, the entire people of Medina, they came for him. Everybody was lined up to participate in the burial. The most perhaps respectful burial of the Imam was the burial of Imam al-Sajjad. They took him step by step, step by step. They entered the cemetery of Baghi. They opened up one grave behind Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salatu was-salam, he has removed the ammama. He has opened up the buttons of his shirt. He goes inside of the qabr. He goes inside of the grave. They hand in the body of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salatu was-salam. He lays it on the grave. He opens up the kafan. He faces the body of Imam al-Sajjad towards the Qibla. He leans down. He gives one last kiss to the beautiful face of Sayyid al-Sajideen. But la yawka yawmika ya Aba Abdullah. About 35 years ago, when Imam al-Sajjad comes on the 13th of Muharram, when he goes down inside of the grave, the Bani Asad, they say Imam al-Sajjad would not stand up. We look down. What was he doing? He was leaning down and giving the last kiss to the cut off, dried weight of Abu Abdullah, trying to face the body of Imam al-Hussein towards the Qibla. So he's not coming back up. Oh, Imam al-Sajjad, what has happened? They finally bring him out of the grave. What Imam al-Sajjad is looking around him. What is he seeing? The graves of Shuhada, the graves of Ashab, the grave of Ali Akbar, the grave of Qasim, perhaps the grave of little Ali al-Asghar. So they said every day Imam would mourn for Imam al-Hussein. Whether was it water, whether was it food, whether it was seeing a youth, whether it was seeing a little infant baby, whether it was seeing a cradle, constantly every day and every day and every day.
finally, after 34 years, he calls at Imam al-Baqir. He does his last wasiyah. Imam al-Baqir says, then Imam fainted for some time. Then he opened his eyes. He started reciting Surah Waqi'ah and Surah Fatih. Then once he finished, he fainted one more time. The eyes opened up again. He starts saying, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All thanks to Allah for giving us the inheritance of earth and giving us the heaven of the hereafter. He closes his eyes and inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un.
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بثنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم الهي بحق محمد وعلي وفاطمة والحسن والحسين وتسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج والعافية والنصر واجعلنا من خص أعوانه وشيعته. اللهم ارحم أمواتنا واشف أمراضنا واجعل عاقبة الأمور خيرا. Oh Allah, will ask you on the right of Imam al-Hussein and the right of Imam Zain al-Abidin to hasten the appearance of Imam of time and grant every single one of us to become part of his true companions. Oh Allah, will ask you for forgiveness upon all of us and upon all of the marhumin and marhumat. Oh Allah, will ask you for shifa and complete shifa for all of those who have come down with sicknesses. Oh Allah, will ask you to accept this majalis on your mercy and extend the sawab and rewards of this majalis to the soul of maraji, ulama, shuhada and marhumin and marhumat. Oh Allah, oh Allah, oh Allah, will ask you to grant every single one of us the ziyarat of Abu Abdullah in this world and inshallah the benefits of his shafa'ah in the next. Oh Allah, will ask you to continue guiding us on Sirat al-Mustaqim and grant us the life of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad and the death of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein. सजाद पे है जुल्म की जो इंतहा हुई, सजाद पे है जुल्म की जो इंतहा हुई, सजाद पे है जुल्म की जो इंतहा हुई। आँखों के सामने ही बिनते नबी की लाडली है बेरदा हुई, सजाद पे है जुल्म की जो इंतहा हुई, सजाद पे है जुल्म की जो इंतहा हुई। تو نے تو سر کٹا لیا مقتل میں سو گئے، کوفہ و شام اب میری قسمت میں ہو گئے، سائے میں پتھروں کے بھیا لو میری قتل کی اب ابتدا ہوئی، سجاد پہ ہے ظلم کی وہ انتہا ہوئی، سجاد پہ ہے ظلم کی وہ انتہا ہوئی، بازار شام ناطق قرآن آ گئے، تھا شور قاص و عام میں مہمان آ گئے، زہرا کی بیٹیوں کے ہاتھوں میں رسیاں کیا ان سے قطع ہوئی، سجاد پہ ہے ظلم کی وہ انتہا ہوئی، سجاد پہ ہے ظلم کی جو انتہا ہوئی، زندان میں سہمی ہوئی بیٹھی ہے سکینہ، دیکھا ہے اس نقاب میں ہے بابا کا سینہ، سوئی نہیں ہے پل بھی بابا سے اپنے اجڑی ایسے جدا ہوئی، سجاد پہ ہے ظلم کی جو انتہا ہوئی، سجاد پہ ہے ظلم کی حسین
يا حسين ومصابه، يا حسين هلا بيك هلا بيك، يا حسين ومصابه، ولأجل العين سجابه، وزينب تي وتنادي، وزينب تي وتنادي، ويا حسين يا لذكرك بطرف لساني، وحاشاك لن يوم الوعد تنساني، وحاشاك لن يوم الوعد تنساني. بارك الله بيك. اسمعني. يوم يموت دمعي يحييني، جرح السبي يبس شراييني، يوم يموت دمعي يحييني، جرح السبي يبس شراييني، ما بي أي روح ميت بالجروح، جرح السبي يبس شراييني. يوم يموت دمعي يحييني، جرح السبي يبس شراييني، يوم يموت دمعي يحييني، جرح السبي يبس شراييني ما بي أي روح ميت بالجروح ما بي أي روح ميت بالجروح جرح السبي يبس شراييني يوم يموت ودمعي يحيني جرح السبي يبس شراييني ما بي أي روح ميت ما بي أي روح ميت بالجروح جرح السبي يبس شراييني يوم يموت يوم يموت ودمعي يحيني جرح السبي يبس شراييني يوم يموت ودمعي يحيني جرح السبي يبس شراييني ما بي أي روح ميت ما بي أي روح جرح السبي يبس شراييني أنا مو مرة متت بجروحي مرات من شفيد بعيوني عماتي سبيات أنا مو مرة متت بجروحي مرات من شفيد بعيوني عماتي سبيات الموت أهون والله من ذيك المعاناة قيديني بسلسلة وانزف جراحات قيديني بسلسلة وانزف حاد ما انسى لحظة الجره بعماتي اذكر سبيهن واجري دمعاتي ما انسى لحظة الجره بعماتي اذكر سبيهن واجري دمعاتي ومرافق النوح ميت بالجروح جرح السبي يبس شراييني يوم يموت ودمعي يحيني جرح السبي يبس شراييني ما بي أي روح ميت ما بي أي روح ميت بالجروح جرح السبي يبس شراييني عمري خلصت بمناحة تهدم الحيل أذكر المذبوح أبويا ودمعتي تسيل ضامي ذبح وآل ميه وداسة الخيل وذر من جسم الحوافر قامت تشيل وذر من جسم الحوافر قامت تشيل بعيون الشاهد والشبل عبره خلال مية كسرت صدره بعيون الشاهد والشبل عبره خلال مية كسرت صدره شاهدت مذبوح ميت بالجروح ون شاهدت مذبوح ميت بالجروح جرح السبي بالشرايين، جرح السبي بالشرايين، يوم يموت ودمعي وانا جرح السبي بالشرايين، يوم يموت ودمعي يحيني، جرح السبي بالشرايين، ما بي يروح ميت بعافية، ما بي يروح ميت بالجروح، جرح السبي بالشرايين، يا حسايف الموت متأخر اجاني، يا حسايف الموت متأخر اجاني، واني كل ساذب حيذبحني زماني، لو رديت انسى جرح يلجمني ثاني، والاشد جرح السبي اكثر سباني، بعيوني دوم المنظر تشوفه، من طبة الديوان مجتوفه، بعيوني دوم المنظر تشوفه، من طبة الديوان مجتوفه، والمدمع يفوح ميت بلد، والمدمع يفوح ميت بالجروح، جرح السبي يبش يني، جرح السبي يبش شراييني، 33 عام من المناحة، علت ولوا جيش بسيوفه ورماحه، ابكي دم صبحي ومسه ماكو استراحه، شفت ابويا مقطع وتنزيف جراحه، شفت ابويا مقطع وتنزيف جراحه، لاخر نفس تشويني آلامه، نار القلب من جمرة خيامه، لاخر نفس تشويني آلامه، نار القلب من جمرة خيامه، دم نحر مسفوح ميت بالجروح، دم نحر ميت بالجروح، جرح السبي بالشرايين، جرح السبي بالشرايين، جينا ننشد كربلاء ضينها بيها أنا بقى لاوم يسرينها، جينا ننشد كربلاء ضيعينها، بيها زينب قالاوم يسرينها، يسروها ولالها واحد في زع، شال حد يضعونها ساعي وقطع، جينا ننشد وانا ابو فاضل وقع، جينا ننشد وانا ابو فاضل وقع ما تدلون الشريعة وينها ما تدلون الشريعة وينها يسروها ولالها واحد فزع شال حد يضعونها ساعي وقيطع جينا ننشد وانا ابو فاضل وقع ما تدلون الشريعة وينها بس اشوفه والعتب مني يزول واضرب فاضل على النخوة يجول عذره حقه يقول مقطوع الزنود عذره حقه يقول مقطوع الزنود وحال ملك الموت بينه وبينها وحال ملك الموت بينها جينا ننشد كربلاء عليها نعاتب جينا ننشد كربلاء عليها نعاتب تقول هاي رجال وتدور الغلب حرمة زينب بيش مطلوبة بذنب حرمة زينب بيش مطلوبة بذنب فوق جت لحسين ومسلبينها أردن اشتكي كربلاء عن النزيل شلون ضاعني الحرام جالي بلا دليل مكان قلتي لي وينها العليل وبالمرض مشدوه وهو نوينها أردن اشتكهم صدق بالشام عيد وحاطه وبطشت الذهب راس الشهيد ومن شد زينب يبدي وانا يزيد جاي عده لو واجفه مخلينها أردن اشتكهم صدق بالشام عيد وحاطه وبطشة الذهب راس الشهيد ومن شد زينب يبدي وانا يزيد جاعده يو واجفه خلينها جينا ننشد على العالي ليمن ويله فوق ضعن المرض هل بالوبتله جينا ننشد على العالي ليمن ويله فوق ضعف المرض هل بالوبتله ليش ما غاصت بهل كربله من قيطع بالسيف راسي حسين. إلهنا بزين العابدين اقضي حوائجنا يا الله. إلهنا بمريض كربلاء عافي وشافي جميع المرضى يا الله. إلهنا تقبل منا ومن المؤسسين بأحسن قبول يا الله، ولأمواتنا وأموات خدام الحسين وأموات الحاضرين رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.